So here's the real question. How do dentists like you, who aren't willing to let insurance dictate how you will run your practice, who want to create incredibly profitable practices without sacrificing your time or sanity, how do you create the strategies to ensure your practice not only survives but thrives in the 21st century? That's the blaring question, and Dr. Steve Schalintz is here to provide the answers. Welcome to Dental Practice Freedom Radio.
Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Dr. Steve Schalintz. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Dental Practice Freedom Radio. And thank you so much. I have officially hit my goal of 10,000 downloads on this podcast, and it's taken me a long time to get there. 110 episodes in, but I looked at the stats, and I think I was at 10,200 downloads. Kind of forgotten about it, to be honest, but I was curious. So I said, hey, I wonder how many downloads there's been. And it was 10,200. So I want to thank each and every one of you, the listeners, for continuing to support me. It's been a year and a half now, somewhere in that capacity, maybe even almost 2 years since I started this podcast. And we've covered a variety of topics about personal growth, professional growth, practice growth, habits, self-image, sales, you name it. We've covered it in this podcast. And I think in the future, it's really going to be gearing more towards the new patient process and comprehensive case acceptance and how to make all those things work. But I'm still going to touch on a lot of business elements because I'm going to be honest, the most impactful mentors and coaches that I've had, most of them aren't in the dental realm. And it's a good and bad thing. I think some coaches that I've had in the dental realm are awesome, but I've also had a lot of high level concepts in terms of business management that have just been truly remarkable. And I try to take that and put it into this podcast. So again, I want to thank you. If you've been listening to this since episode 1, or if you just tuned into this podcast, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this. As always, if you could leave me a review or a rating, it helps me learn what you guys are looking for. And it also helps me get in front of more dentists, which is ultimately my mission. If you've been listening to this podcast, you understand that there's different models of freedom in dentistry. And there's two big models right now that I think we're starting to see. One is that corporate DSO style model. And if you're a dentist that's looking to get into that, you get practices, you build out your practice, and you try to delegate to associates and things like that, so you have freedom that way. That's a great model, and it works really well. The model that I ascribe to primarily, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't get in that other model, and in fact, I've looked at ways to do that even while I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just saying when I coach or I teach other dentists, I stick to what I know. I don't try to teach you something that I don't personally do and personally don't know about. But the other model of freedom is getting really, really good at comprehensive case acceptance, understanding the technical aspects of dentistry, really moving patients towards a more complete path to wellness. And what happens is when you get really, really good technically, you can also create freedom for yourself because now you don't have to do as much work. You don't have to do the bread and butter work. You don't have to be there 5 days a week. You could run your practice on a day a week if you wanted to when you get to a certain level. And I believe personally that you get a lot more fulfillment out of that because the patients you're impacting, you're changing their lives, like truly, genuinely changing their lives. Some of the work that I've done in the TMJ realm with temporomandibular joint disorder, some of the most rewarding work I can do. It's also some of the most difficult. And so just understanding those things, it makes it fun. I think that we're in dentistry too to have some fun and to be challenged. I find that that's probably one of the most interesting aspects of dentistry. I think it's one of the hardest professions to be in. And because of that, it also has the most challenges and the most rewards. And so that's what this podcast is all about. And I wanted to kind of go a little bit off dental topic for this episode and talk about a documentary I saw. And it was a documentary on the last season of Game of Thrones. If you are a GOT fan, I'm sure you've seen this documentary. It was The Last Watch. If you have not seen Game of Thrones, I promise I will not spoil the entire show for you. And if you have desire to watch Game of Thrones, I highly encourage you to do that. It's one of the few shows that I still will binge watch, and I'll just really dig into. And one of the reasons that I love Game of Thrones is the complexity of the entire operation. You know, like the storyline, the characters, the plots. There's so much going on, and even with the show, what a massive undertaking to take these books that are just absolutely ginormous. I don't know how else to describe that, with so much complexity. And George R.R. Martin spent his entire life basically writing these books and then put them into a series. That usually is a recipe for disaster. But despite what some people have said about the last season of Game of Thrones, I don't know how you could have done it any differently. It's got to be almost impossible to do what they try to do. So this Last Watch, why did I watch this and why do I want to talk about this? The Last Watch was an incredible look into the systems that take place for an episode of Game of Thrones to come live. And Game of Thrones, you know, typically the episodes would be anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half in length. And it's always been said that every time they do an episode, it's like doing a full-length feature film on a reduced budget. But when you watch that show, you know that is one of the most beautifully designed and implemented shows ever. And so I'm watching this, and I'm learning how they make the snow for the episodes and what's in it. And, you know, it's water and paper, but they're bringing the snow and they're putting in this location and this location. And they got all these moving pieces in the costume design and the makeup. And they spend months and months and months filming these, and they did like 3 months of just night shoots. That's all they do. They shoot at night. And so you have all these different moving pieces. And it was interesting in a lot of different capacities, because I think of our practices in much the same way, that everybody has their role and they put 110% into the role. And if everybody puts 110% into their role, the costume designer, the snowmaker, the writers, the cinematographers, the videographers, the actors, the actresses, and they all put together, they make this beautiful thing. Now, what's so interesting is when you look at the night shoots, for example, they'll shoot all these random scenes and none of it has a flow between beginning and end. And so they'll shoot random pieces of the entire series and season on these shoots, and they don't even know what they're doing and how they're doing it. They're just taking that one specific element and doing the best they possibly can. And then all of these pieces come together to form this beautiful season. I find that remarkable, right? Because this show is like a system, an organization, an organism, a living entity, right? And our practices are much the same way. So you can't help but, if you're a fan of the show, you have to go watch that if you have not seen it. And if you're a dentist and you're listening to this, and I hope you are at this point, but if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, watch that show, watch the documentary, and then think about, how is my practice like this? We have these specific elements and all these moving pieces, and how do I make my team's life easier by organizing these systems better so that we can have a better end result in our practice. So short, I try to keep them short, as you know, and I just want you to be thinking about your dental office like an organism, like a system, like a structure, because that's what it is. And you do have a lot of moving pieces and all these elements. And so put some pride into what you do in your practice. Understand that everybody has a role to play, and the better they play their individual roles, the better the practice becomes as a result. Stop trying to do everything yourself. I will tell you, right now I have 3 major projects that I'm working on, and I've really had to get back to stop micromanaging everything, find the right people, and go with it. And that's actually going to be the theme of the next podcast episode is how do you delegate without losing your shirt in the process? Because that's another problem that I've seen dentists have. So if you're interested in learning more about that, how do you actually effectively delegate without spending a load of money that you can't get back? That's what the next episode is going to be about. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again for 10,000 downloads. That means the world to me. Hopefully you have a safe week wherever you're at, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode on Dental Practice Freedom Radio with Dr. Steve Schlintz. We'll see you on the next episode.